maybe that's an overall sign of the industry. And Suzanne Eade was hitting back.
There's lots of things. Oh God, yes.
Yeah, so she's hitting back at Davy Russell's criticism about poor prize money and how it could push the industry over the edge. And you quote tweeted this and said, Suzanne Eade's defense was, well, actually, we're spending more money on prize money than ever before. And you made the point, yeah, because you've got more racing than ever before.
Yeah, it just annoyed me when I read that article. Now, obviously, it wasn't, I don't know what journalist wrote it. Obviously, she just gave her line and that was it. She wasn't going to be engaged with. That's what I came across.
Oh, yeah.
And they're often like this. They give out quotes that when you look into them, they don't make, there's not much substance behind them. Like, I think another thing they say about prize money lately is, was I saying that 70% of horses now win prize money compared to before, but I think that's because we now pay back to 6 places, whereas before it was the first 3 and then the first 4. But just because you said you were going to ask me about it, I said I'd look up prize money in the last few years. So I was looking at the Tyra Stakes, a listed race in Leopardstown in 2004, so 20 years ago, and the winner, Elusive Double, got 32,000 for winning, and this year Hot as Hell got 29,000. Now, maybe they are worth the same. It's just the fact that we go back, to 6 places, as I said. But then I was looking at a Group 3. So the Round Tower Stakes in 2004, the winner got 52,000. And in 2023, because it hasn't been run yet this year, let's be frank about it, got 32,000. So that's 52,000 down to 32,000. That's disgraceful that are listed in Group 3s just are at such a low level. I mean, if you think about what's happened in the last 20 years, the price of a racing post has gone up, the price of a pint, everyone's rent has gone up, the wages you pay your stable staff has gone up, the feed has gone up, but our prize money hasn't improved. I'd say the wages of people who run racing has gone up, but yet the prize money hasn't gone up. It doesn't make sense. The minimum, as well, the minimum value of races is dropping. Like, a nod to 100 handicap in 2019 was worth 25,000. A nod to 100 at the Curragh the other day was worth 22,000. So it's less than it was in 2019. I feel like the government is throwing money at racing all the time, and it's definitely not reflected in the prize money.
No, it's not. Do you know what €52,000 from 2004 is worth? The equivalent of that is worth now?
No.
€72,357, adjusting for inflation. €25,000 in 2019 is now worth 26,794, adjusting for inflation.
The way I look at it, though, I think the one type of race we overpay for is the nod to 65s. And, people will criticize me for saying that, but when I was training, I had a lot of low-grade nod to 65 horses. But I'd never expected to make any money out of them. I think those races should be to give horses a chance, owners a day out of the races, owners a chance to have a winner, but not to make any money, and, trainers to show what they can do. But once you get up to, horses rated in the 80s, 85s, 90s, horses below Premier Handicap level, they're competing for very, very little money, and they're never winning back what they can. And I think even a lot of the Premier Handicaps, like, I'm mostly looking at the Sprint Premier Handicaps, the likes of the Joe McGrath and races like that, they're only worth, I don't know, 25,000 or so to the winner, I think. You keep a horse in training and it's rated in the hundreds and it's just below listed class. You should be making money with them. What's to entice an owner to keep a horse in training here rather than go to France, where they're going to get their travel paid for, they're going to get the bonuses, excellent prize money. Another thing in France, I think if your horse doesn't win, its handicap mark doesn't change.
Yeah.
I think place. So I just don't see the incentives to keep people in racing, and how are you meant to make any money as well? Like, the price of taking a horse even to the races has gone up hugely in the past few years, with fuel and travel expenses for staff and the likes. It makes no sense. And I think it's shameful, and it's very disrespectful for the people in charge of racing to just come out with little sentences here and there, but not to engage in the discussion at all. Like, in no way in that comment from Suzanne Eade did she engage. It looked like she barely even read Davy Russell's article.
Well, Suzanne Eade's comments, it was in the Racing Post. I'm not going to say who because I can't remember who wrote it. But it was a journalist who was doing their job and asked a very fair question. What are you doing about the upcoming ban, not proposed, ban on gambling advertising, which is agreed upon by all the major parties? It's one of the few things they actually can all agree upon. So it's going to happen. And the head of Sky Sports Racing has said, that's it, we're not going to broadcast in Ireland anymore because it won't be viable for us. And Sky don't cover Irish racing, so there's no incentive for HRI to back them in any way. And Racing TV said the same thing. We're out. That's it. We have Irish broadcasting rights, but we will not showcase Irish racing in Ireland because it's not viable for us. It'll cost too much money to do a separate stream, which means HRI will have to do some sort of bailout or contribute to Racing TV broadcasting for our benefit. How many people actually subscribe to Racing TV in Ireland? I don't know. I can't imagine it's too many. But that's devastating. I don't know how viable it will be for RTE to continue doing broadcasts of racing. You'd like to think they will, but if you can't sell gambling advertising anymore, what's the viability of that? And when the journalist from the Racing Post asked Suzanne Eade for her comments, she said, oh no, the TV will continue. How? What's your explanation for how are you going to do this? Oh, it will continue. These throwaway comments do nothing to give you encouragement that racing is actually, you're hearing us, you understand that there are problems in racing, you're doing something to address this. Just sound bites, really quick sound bites that are very dismissive.
I think we need to put more money as well, not just the listed and group races though. More money into handicaps in Ireland. I heard Johnny Mercer talking about it at the start of the year. Just not that I want us to go down the Australian route of most of the races handicaps, but I mean, obviously it's looking bleak on the television front, and I don't know what's happening there, and I'm never a good person to judge that. But just to keep racing as I know it functioning, I think, there needs to be a huge overhaul in the way prize money is allocated and a huge jump in the figures.
Do you know how many trainers on the flat in Ireland have trained more than 20 winners this season?
I wouldn't say I don't know. It's not too many ones.
5. That's a prize money issue. If you don't have the prize money, how are you going to get the horses in? We know how many trainers trained more than 50 winners over jumps because IHRB kind of gave the game away. We're introducing a new series of races that are eligible for trainers who have not trained more than 50 winners last season.
I feel like this isn't probably the day to discuss that, but I think that's kind of a similar situation with HRI because it seemed to me like they're refusing to engage in any discussion there either. I felt like putting on a new series was like putting a plaster or a Band-Aid over a cut and not really engaging on why there's such a discrepancy between the firepower, the ammunition, or the type of horses that people have. They were like, no, there you go, pat on the head, there's your own type of races to suit you. It wasn't really getting into the nitty-gritty of what the problem is.
Yeah. Here's a series of races not open to William Mullins, Henry de Bromhead, Gordon Elliott, and Gavin Cromwell. Now, don't ask any questions. Just consume product and get excited for more product.
Rather than reshuffling the program, making sure there's races to suit all different types of horses, not that, there's a consolation prize for you, say, and not engaging. I even don't think it's fair on the trainers in the top 4. Nope. You know what I mean? Now, I'm not as well up on the National Hunt program as I am on the flat, but I do know looking at the flat program, there are gaps for weeks. If you miss one type of race for your horse, you won't be able to run to sometimes, weeks later. It's not like you have all options open to you. And so it doesn't depend on, I can't run because Aidan O'Brien and Joseph have a runner, and it's just because the races aren't there. And I do sometimes think looking at National Hunt, I could be wrong, with huge emphasis on loads of maidens, and then their graded races are another kettle of fish and another problem. But I'm sure they could have engaged more with the trainers and find out a way of working around it rather than just giving them a little consolation prize, as I say.
As a former trainer yourself, maybe this is a rude question to ask, but is the win percentage of the prize money that you win 10%?
No, I don't think it's quite 10%, but it's very little.
Okay, so that's
the type of races I was winning, you make very little money from your win prize money. But, I'm more interested in the owners. I feel like I'd say most trainers in Ireland, if they're making money and they're not at the upper echelon of trainers, they're expecting to win money from trading horses. And that's why we don't have horses to run in certain caliber of races here. That's kind of part of the problem. It's a vicious cycle. But I know, like, the prize money you see that a horse gets, there's so many deductions from that, and the owner has to give money, to the jockey. There's money that goes to the Irish Horse Welfare Trust, and so on and so forth. So what a horse gets is a lot less than the finishing product.
Because
Very
if you were just to look at it from the point of view of prize money, the sixth base trainer in terms of wins has, if we just let's go up and say it's 10%, that means 335,000 is really 35 grand. Paddy Toomey seventh, 440,000. Well, that's 44 grand. Well, that's not going to fund a stable. There's no way that funds a stable. So it has to be the training fees, and it has to be the trading and selling of horses. That's the only way that can work.
Yeah.
And if I have a British-based trainer coming on this show and saying, well, part of my business model is winning a maiden with a racehorse and then selling that horse to another jurisdiction, which essentially means he's openly stating, yeah, the business model is for British racing to be a feeder system for the other jurisdictions around the world. Like, that's not sustainable there, but it's also not sustainable here. And particularly when you hear from owners that you talk to, like, they're getting offers of 250 grand upwards for a horse who's won a maiden. Like, unless your trainer is a real good salesman and very optimistic and you've got real deep pockets, how do you say no to that kind of money? Especially if someone in Hong Kong is going to pay you $500,000 right now.
Well, especially say if you have a gelding and you're trying to run enlisteds and group threes, just to win them. Like, you're only going up in the ratings, and so you're not good enough to win one. You're not going to win that much prize money. It would make a lot more sense to sell that horse to America or Australia.
Yep.
Like, what's the incentive to keep a gelding in training then?
Non-existent, Sarah. This is a paid advertisement from BetterHelp Therapy Online. What are your self-care non-negotiables? Maybe you never skip leg day or therapy day. When your schedule is packed with kids' activities, big work projects, and more, it's easy to let your priorities slip. Even when we know what makes us happy, it's hard to make time for it. But when you feel like you've no time for yourself, non-negotiables like therapy are more important than ever. If you've ever been in therapy, then like me, you know how beneficial it can be. But it's not just for those who've experienced major trauma. It's helpful for learning positive coping skills and setting boundaries. Therapy empowers you to be the best version of yourself. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a registered therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. With almost 5,000 therapists in the UK already, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a wide variety of expertise. Visit betterhelp.com/furlong today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/furlong. This is a paid advertisement by BetterHelp. Give online therapy a try at betterhelp.com/furlong to get 10% off your first month and get on your way to being your best self. Kieran Schumacher. So came in for huge amounts of stick, particularly in the trade paper. Two people at least, one not necessarily saying fire that guy, but one of them absolutely saying that it's time for somebody else to get a go, I believe was what the line was. And then it subsequently emerges two of the horses they were referring to. Well, one, Freewind, picked up an injury at Glorious Goodwood and is now retired, so she couldn't possibly have won. And Inspiral got beaten yet again, this time under the world's best jockey in Ryan Moore. So does this now mean that Kieran Schumacher can start beating his chest and feel a little bit more confident after his win over the weekend and go, see, I can't do it. The firepower is not there at the Gosden Yard. Give me the firepower and I'll produce the goods for you. Or is he a jockey and therefore you're in Group 1s, you are a Group 1 jockey riding for one of the biggest stables. Frankie Dettori got a whole lot of criticism. This is part of the job. You have to deal with it.
I was a little bit dismayed by the reaction to the Racing Post articles during the week. I think it's fair enough to have an opinion whether someone should be a stable jockey, whereas, if someone shouldn't. It's the same as saying, should a player be left on the bench? Should a player be taken off the field in a rugby match if an actor was miscast or not shouldn't be cast in that role? We're all grown-ups here. We all have a view on it. I suppose John Gosden, I'd be a huge fan of the John Gosden stable. I'd always like to see them having winners, so I wouldn't be looking at it from like a punter's perspective. But it's disappointing when his horses aren't doing so well. I wouldn't be so quick to place the blame on Kieran Schumacher's shoulders. As a lot of people have pointed out, he's riding a lot of older mares. They're quite tricky. And the yard probably doesn't have the firepower that they once did. But I think it's too black and white to look at it and say, well, Ryan Moore got beaten on Inspiral, so it would have been exactly the same. I think he's not at Ryan Moore's level yet, and I think it's fair enough to leave. I think it's fair enough to choose not to leave Ryan Moore sitting in the weigh room with no one using him in a Group 1.
Yeah.
Take advantage. I mean, Kieran Schumacher is only learning. He can only improve. Not that he's not doing well already, but he's not the finished article. At least they're hoping he's not. And so I think they were right to pick Ryan Moore. Like the filly, they're not. I think they're saying she's one race left. And I mean, yes, she got left, and she definitely looks a bit of a madam. But I thought the way that Ryan rode her was possibly a little bit different than the way Kieran Schumacher would have ridden her. I thought she got left, and Ryan was lucky in that they didn't go hard. You know, not like in Ascot when they went quite quick. So it was easy for her to catch up. But I noticed that when Ryan was making his move, just looking at his body language, he was kidding her along a lot more. He didn't go from sitting up to straight down the drive position to get her going, and he wasn't too forceful in the saddle. And for the most part, he was just smacking her down the shoulder. She was kind of looking away from the rest of the field. Whereas I think if you look at the ride Kieran Schumacher gave her in the Prince of Wales Stakes, yeah, she got left. We can blame her for that. Like, she seems to want to do this. But I noticed that he was sitting up on her turning in, and he straight away went down to the saddle when they turned in and got after her. There was no like working with her, cajoling, and then she can just throw the dollies out of the pram a wee bit. Now, obviously, she didn't stay. But I'm just thinking, if you're looking at body language, that just shows the experience factor between the jockeys, maybe the confidence factor between the jockeys. Do you know, maybe it's a sign of desperation that you're like, please go, do you know?
Yeah.
Getting after her straight away. And that's just the difference that the likes of Ryan Moore brings, but you won't get him all the time. So what John Gosling has to do is, if he's chosen Kieran Schumacher, he has to train him in, essentially. Like we were talking earlier about horses, bringing them along year by year. You know, jockeys also are not machines and have to be broken into a new job and thought. And just reading interviews, it sounds like Kieran has a method himself. He got rid of Twitter. He doesn't look at social media. I doubt he read the Racing Post. So he's probably okay. It's getting a little bit nauseating, though, always having to. I don't know. I find it interesting to discuss jockey bookings and tactics, but I'm finding it a bit odd this year, the way people are so quick to get behind jockeys and getting so hurt on their behalf if anything bad is said about him. Like, he came on ITV one day and he was barely as an analyst. He was more or less apologising and explaining his Emily Upjohn ride the whole way through the show. And then I remember, speaking of Ambiente Friendly, pre the Derby, certain presenters were hoping that Ambiente Friendly wouldn't win just purely because Callum Shepherd got the job.
Yeah, which is weird.
Forgetting that someone minds that horse and puts a lot of work in to look after that horse. Someone bred that horse, well, the owners. And James Fanshawe deserves a Group 1 winner, and he puts a lot of work in too. So I think people get a little bit infantile about these things. You know, yes, people can be nasty, and there's no place for that kind of comment. But I think there's so many, you know, different edges to these stories. You know, there's a little bit more nuance than people are giving it credit for.
If we've come to the point where, oh, you can't criticize. Oh, you can't possibly criticize. Oh, my goodness, how dare you say that awful thing about him? Oh, my goodness. He's a jockey. If he's messed up, we have to be able to call that out. Because if we can't do that, then what's the point of doing any of this?
Yeah, I think that's very dangerous for the sport. I really do. I mean, and I think it's how we're going to pale in comparison to other sports. Sometimes I watch racing and I'm like, am I watching a children's program here? Because they're just saying how lovely everyone is the whole time. Do you know?
That's another great day at the races. Oh, look at all the kids having such a great time. What a great day. Don't care. I'm here to watch the racing.
Do you remember when Sally Field won the Oscars and she was like, you like me, you really like me? That's how racing behaves when people tune into it. That's what I think. It's, you know, they are so shocked and delighted that everyone's there. Just be confident. If something's wrong, say it. If someone gives a bad ride, say it. If a horse is amazing, say it. You know, we should be allowed to dissect things and go through things. Like, I'm a bit of a geek, so I enjoy all that. But I think we're living in a geeky age. We're living in an age where people pore over Taylor Swift's lyrics and find meaning in everything. You know, people should like to talk about the nooks and crannies of racing. And if someone gets criticized in the crossfire, that, well, so be it, as long as it's based on fact. And, you know, I think we need to have opinions and people need to be able to take them. Now, if someone's talking out of their pocket and criticizing a jockey relentlessly and for no reason, that's another thing. But I thought the discussion of Kieran Schumacher was quite interesting until recently. It just got a little bit tiresome.
Yeah, I actually thought David's piece was really good in the Racing Post. I thought it was a very balanced piece and very fair.
Yeah,
and then he seemed to feel like he needed to defend it yesterday because Matt Chapman's like, well, there you go. See, she's beaten. Oh, that just goes to prove. It doesn't really...
But then that's kind of infantile as well, isn't it? I feel like people wanted her to be beaten.
Yeah.
Just make it them ashamed for putting up Ryan Moore, and that's ridiculous too.
How dare you do what you thought was best for your racehorse? Who do you think you are?
Watch Ryan Moore in a Group 1 with a chance, I'll take it.
Yeah, I think everybody would want Ryan Moore. Pretty sure Sheikh Mohammed would go for Ryan Moore if he could. And he has on brief occasions in the past. Yeah, I find the whole thing really interesting.
I will say that John Gosden is able to criticize jockeys if he wants to.
Look at what he did to Frankie.
Yeah, and he seems to be very supportive of Kieran Schumacher in the past anyway. So.
Well, and we'll end it on this. I think that's the overall point here. I think it's really good for us to have these conversations because the more we talk about stuff, the more we can move forward. Also, the idea that you would not criticize a manager who's clearly failing in the Premier League or a footballer who's not scoring for his team after costing a fortune on TalkSport, that's laughable. Like, they would literally pull you off the air if you weren't criticizing. You're clearly a shill. It's like trying to pretend the racing league's great. It's like, come on, like nobody believes this anymore. But, good, fair play for trying. You've all tried, but let's just move on now quickly. Thanks very much. But you need to be able to criticize that stuff. And if you don't, there's no authenticity to what you're saying then. The two people this will have no effect on are John and Thady Gosden. They don't care what Sarah Lynam or Emmet Kennedy or Matt Chapman or David Jennings or anybody has to say. They care about their own opinions and they'll act accordingly. And the same reason that ITV won't give Champions Full Gallop a second season, it has nothing to do with the fact that some people were critical about it on social media. Oh, it's your fault. No, the executives will look at the data and go, not doing that again. And John and Thady Gosden will make their decision about Kieran Schumacher based on their experience and what they think, not what any outside influence is at all.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
And on that bombshell, we're out. We're done. Sarah, that was really fun. Thank you very much for your insight. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
And for those who are watching on YouTube, Sorka, Sarah.
Oh, yeah. That's good.
Yeah. See, Irish never took for me, but even I knew it was Irish. If you like this episode, likes on social media are much appreciated. There is a competition. You can win tickets to go to the Coolmore Nunthorpe Day, if I could use my mouth words correctly, at York Racecourse. Just follow us on X for details about how you and a friend can be there and enjoy a fantastic day at a brilliant racecourse. We're broadcasting live on TalkSport 2 as well, so hopefully you'll join us for that. And more Final Furlong podcast content coming your way very, very soon, including big name jockey on the show, very big name jockey on the show soon, one of the biggest trainers in the world on the show soon, and hopefully a little bit more of Sarah Lynam as well. We'll talk to you soon. Take care. God bless. The Final Furlong podcast is proudly brought to you by Jeff Banks Bet. Join the excitement and sign up to Jeff Banks online now to get 10% off any net losses returned as cash after your first month of betting up to £500 at jeffbanks.bet.